found something. Over there.
You're safe. I gotta move you. All right, we got you. Okay. All right.
No hospital.
Okay. All right. I am sorry about this. I am sorry.
What is it? I don't know.
Oi, oi.
Can I help you?
Trying to find my sister. She came up the river.
I'm sorry. I hope you find her.
I don't think you understand. You haven't seen her, talked to her, nothing?
I'm pretty sure.
I don't think I believe you. See you soon.
Don't.
It's me again. But you had to fight. You had to make yourself fall.
The story begins by introducing Alejandro, a ruthless drug cartel leader. He arrives at an adult bar in search of a dealer named Jensen, who has stolen from his criminal organization. Upon arrival, he finds only Lizzie, who is Jensen's girlfriend. Alejandro makes it clear that Jensen needs to meet with him immediately to resolve the debt. Lizzie attempts to distance herself from the situation by explaining that Jensen is not actually her boyfriend. She claims they only had a one-night relationship and have not spoken since the encounter. Alejandro is unmoved by her explanation and refuses to let her go. He produces a knife and threatens to kill Lizzie and her family if she does not assist him in locating Jensen. As Lizzie prepares to leave the bar, a security guard notices the intimidation and attempts to intervene. He tries to stop Alejandro from leaving with her, but he is unaware of the danger Alejandro poses. Without hesitation, Alejandro kills the security guard in front of the witnesses and continues with his pursuit. The setting then shifts to a remote and quiet area deep in the woods of Oklahoma. Here we meet Beaudry, a rugged and reclusive loner with a shadowy past. He is a retired secret agent who has chosen to live a disciplined and quiet life away from the city. He lives in a small, isolated cabin with his daughter Tag. Tag, also known as Sophie, is a sharp and independent girl who has been raised entirely off the grid. Unlike typical teenagers, her life is defined by strict discipline and survival training. Instead of traditional social activities, Beaudry teaches her how to handle firearms and defend herself. Tag views this unconventional lifestyle as completely normal and is comfortable with her father's rules. On the morning of Tag's birthday, Beaudry begins the day with prayer, expressing gratitude for his family and their peaceful existence. He has prepared a cake and a special gift to celebrate the occasion. While Tag is still asleep, Beaudry drives into town to pick up hunting supplies and other necessities. While at a local shop, Beaudry spots a used lawnmower that is still in relatively good condition. He realizes it can be easily repaired and purchases it at a low price to use back at the cabin. When he returns home, Tag wakes up and opens her birthday present. She is excited to find a semi-automatic Glock weapon, which is a gift she has wanted for a long time. After putting her new weapon away, Tag heads down to the nearby river to do some fishing. While she is by the water, she suddenly hears a person screaming for help. Trusting the survival instincts her father taught her, she does not rush in blindly. Instead, she returns to the cabin to alert Beaudry, who has just finished unloading his supplies. Beaudry and Tag head to the river together to investigate the sounds. They soon discover a young woman named January drifting in the water near the shore. She is bloodied, beaten, and near death. Beaudry pulls her from the water and notices that she is suffering from a gunshot wound in her side. Beaudry's initial instinct is to take the woman to a hospital, but January regains consciousness just long enough to beg him not to. She is clearly terrified of being found by the people who shot her. Despite his desire to remain distant and uninvolved, Beaudry decides to bring her back to the cabin. With limited medical supplies, he begins performing emergency first aid to stop her bleeding. After Beaudry treats her wounds, Tag prepares warm chicken soup to help January regain some of her strength. As night falls, Beaudry speaks with Tag and warns her to maintain a safe distance from their guest. He reminds her that January is a complete stranger with a gunshot wound, and they have no information regarding her true identity or the people following her. Beaudry's primary focus remains the safety of his daughter and the security of their home. The next morning, January wakes up in the cabin and finds that her hand has been cuffed to the bed frame. Tag calmly explains to her that this is part of her father's standard safety protocol for dealing with unknown individual. Despite the unsettling nature of being restrained, January understands that the father and daughter are acting out of a desire to protect themselves. Meanwhile, Beaudry heads into the local town to purchase medicine and clean clothes for January. While at the supermarket, he unexpectedly encounters an old friend, a local sheriff named Brake. Sheriff Brake introduces Beaudry to his new partner, an officer named Davenport who was recently transferred to the area. After a brief and casual conversation, Beaudry completes his errands and returns to the woods. Later that night, after Tag has gone to sleep, January approaches Beaudry to explain her situation. She reveals that she returned home from work one evening to find her roommate Lizzie being tortured by two masked men. Although January was not the primary target, she was caught in the violence and injured during the struggle. The attackers then forced both women to a nearby river. January explains that the men were searching for a man connected to Lizzie, whom they shot before throwing his body into the water. January attempted to run away but was shot in the stomach before she could escape. The men believed she was dead and allowed the river current to carry her away. At dawn, Beaudry decides to investigate the riverbank to verify January's account of the events. During his search, Beaudry discovers Lizzie's body caught in some branches near the edge of the water. He realizes that if the killers find the body, they will know that January likely survived and is still in the area. To protect his location, he makes the difficult choice to release Lizzie's body back into the river current so it will drift further downstream. Beaudry returns home and shares his findings with Tag, debating whether they should continue to hide January or contact the authorities. Tag insists that they should help the woman recover fully before making a decision, and Beaudry eventually agrees to wait. A few days later, January has recovered enough strength to step outside the cabin for the first time. She finds Beaudry and expresses her deep gratitude for saving her life. She acknowledges that without his intervention, she would have died in the wood. Seeing that she is much healthier, Beaudry informs her that he has arranged to move her to a private clinic owned by a trusted friend. He assures her that he will cover all the expenses for her continued care, and January accepts the plan. Elsewhere, the criminal leader Alejandro captures Jensen and subjects him to a brutal interrogation. It is revealed that Jensen is actually a corrupt police officer who has been working for Alejandro's organization. Jensen recently betrayed the gang by stealing goods during a deal and attempting to disappear. When Jensen refuses to provide the information Alejandro wants, Alejandro kills him. The next day, Beaudry prepares to transport January to the clinic as previously discussed. However, while traveling, they are forced to stop because the road is blocked by an active investigation scene managed by Sheriff Brake. Beaudry initially remains calm, as he is on good terms with the sheriff. Sheriff Brake explains to Beaudry that he discovered the body of his subordinate, Jensen, washed up on the riverbank earlier that morning. He further notes that the police received a second report about another body, identified as Lizzie, found further downstream. Because investigators have already linked the two women to the same apartment, they are now actively searching for the missing roommate, January. Davenport, the sheriff's new partner, mentions that footprints were discovered near the area where Lizzie was found. He expresses his suspicion that January might still be alive and receiving help from someone in the area. When Davenport notices a woman sitting in the distance with Beaudry quickly lies and claims she is his niece visiting for Tag's birthday. Realizing that the clinic is no longer a safe option because of the police presence and the investigation, Beaudry decides to take January back to the cabin. Once they are safe inside, January reveals a critical detail she had previously withheld. She explains that during the attack, one of the men removed his mask and threatened her directly, making her a high-risk witness. Beaudry understands that if the killers know January is alive, they will not stop until they find her. That same evening, two strangers arrive at the cabin seeking information. They are men sent by Alejandro to track down the witness. Beaudry firmly denies seeing any unfamiliar women, and while the men initially seem to accept his word and leave, they do not actually depart the property. One of the men secretly sneaks back into the cabin with the intention of killing January while his partner waits in their vehicle. The intruder is unaware of Beaudry's background, and Beaudry manages to capture him. When Tag fires a warning shot to alert her father, Beaudry is forced to kill the intruder to end the immediate threat. To prevent Alejandro from finding their location, Baudry must erase all evidence of the confrontation. He burns the bodies and dumps the men's vehicle in an abandoned mine where it is unlikely to be discovered. When he returns to the cabin, January is overwhelmed with guilt and apologizes for the danger she has brought upon his family. Baudry eventually decides to meet privately with Sheriff Brake to disclose the truth. He admits that January is alive and under his protection, but warns the sheriff that Alejandro's men are already closing in. He asks the sheriff to keep the secret and help move January to a safe location outside the immediate area. Before January leaves, Baudry gives her a large sum of cash to help her start a new life elsewhere. Sheriff Brake takes her into his vehicle and begins to drive her away from the cabin. Tag watches the departure with sadness, having formed a bond with January during her recovery. The next morning, Sophie begins to worry about January's safety and well-being. Baudry shares this concern and attempts to call Sheriff Brake to check on her status. However, he discovers that the sheriff's phone number is no longer active. Realizing something is wrong, Baudry and Sophie decide to go directly to the local police station to find him. While Sophie waits in the car, Baudry is greeted by Davenport. Instead of providing information about Sheriff Brake's location, Davenport shifts the conversation and avoids giving direct answers. He even suggests that Sheriff Brake may have been working illegally with the deceased officer, Jensen. Baudry finds this difficult to believe, as he knows the sheriff to be an honest man who never accepted bribes. Later that night, as Baudry and Sophie are sleeping, a strange car quietly parks near their cabin. The driver is revealed to be Davenport, who sneaks toward the house while carrying a firearm. Before he can take action, Baudry ambushes him and takes him captive. Baudry then ties Davenport to a chair with a lawnmower positioned directly in front of his face to intimidate him into speaking. Under the threat of the machinery, Davenport finally admits the truth. He reveals that Sheriff Brake is already dead and that January was handed over to Alejandro shortly after she left Baudry's protection. Enraged by the loss of his friend and the capture of January, Baudry demands to know where Alejandro is hiding. When Davenport initially refuses to answer, Baudry uses force to extract the location of the gang's hideout. Knowing the danger ahead, Baudry writes a letter to Sophie, apologizing for failing to protect her from this situation. He instructs her that if he does not return by the following morning, she must leave and go to her grandmother's house in Mexico for safety. Baudry then heads to an abandoned factory, bringing the badly beaten Davenport along to use as leverage against the cartel. Upon arriving at the factory, Baudry is confronted by Alejandro. Alejandro remains confident and threatens to kill both Baudry and Davenport. Unknown to Baudry, Sophie has secretly followed him to the location. A violent shootout begins between Baudry and Alejandro's men. During the gunfight, Alejandro retreats deeper into the building, while Baudry is shot in the chest and collapses. One of the gunmen moves in to kill Baudry, but Sophie reacts quickly and shoots the attacker from a distance. This action saves her father, but exposes her position to the remaining enemy. An attacker begins closing in on her, but Sophie outsmarts him by leaving her rifle behind as a decoy to draw him away. Meanwhile, Baudry manages to get inside the building and finds January alive and unharmed. He also discovers that Jensen's wife and child are being held captive but are still alive. As Baudry searches for the keys to free the prisoners, Alejandro suddenly appears and stabs him from behind. Just as Alejandro is about to finish him, Sophie appears and shoots Alejandro, ending the threat permanently. In the aftermath of the violence, both Baudry and January require several months to recover from their physical injuries. Once they are healed, Baudry and Sophie welcome January to live with them in their home. After everything they have been through, January is finally able to feel safe and protected as part of their family.